And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the great Louisiana plain where the sun is shining today in our great state and where we are daily elevating the cause of freedom and liberty and constitutional conservatism, raising the voice of courageous constitutional conservatives across the state, and rapidly now draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful to you, the best listening family anyone could possibly ask or hope for. We are only here because of your encouragement, prayers, and financial support. And if you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. Please keep us in your prayers. We've had a lot of tech issues today. We've had a lot of just life issues, clerical issues today. So anyway, just pray for us. We're going to get back on track, but we would also really appreciate it if you would help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Just if you would like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it and share it. You can share short clips instead of the whole episode by going to our YouTube and Rumble channels, and the links to those, if you're not subscribers on those, are over on freedomstate.us, and they're always in the show notes. So today we have joining us just such a statesman, a voice of conservatism, and a gentleman. The state Senator Jeremy Stine will be joining us here in just a minute. But before we speak with Senator Stine, let me read the scripture of the day. It is Psalm chapter 17, verses 3 through 5. And it says, "For in a visitation of the night, you inspected my heart and refined my soul in fire until nothing vile was found in me. I've wanted my words and my ways to always agree. Following your word has kept me from wrong. Your ways have molded my footsteps, keeping me from going down the paths of the destroyer. My steps follow in the tracks of your chariot wheels, always staying in their path, never straying from your way." And I love this picture of how we can stay on the path that the Lord has for us and not get off and go on to the wrong track. And it starts by allowing God to inspect our hearts and to cleanse us from sin. And it starts with a desire to live authentically, with our words and our actions lining up. And the psalmist goes on to tell us that believing and following the word of God keeps us from going down those wrong paths and keeps us perfectly aligned with the Lord. It's that picture of walking in the tracks of the Lord's chariot wheels. I just thought that was so vivid, because if you think about walking in chariot tracks, it seems like it'd be really easy to stay on track. And it probably would take some kind of deliberate act on our part to get off of the track. So it's just a reminder that the Lord doesn't make it hard for us to follow him. It really just starts with a desire to follow him and the will to do it. And I guess just trust in him that you will be able to continue following him.
Danielle, you are so right. And but as it's interesting, as St. Paul said, he said, too often I do what I don't want to do, and I don't do what I should do. And I've always believed that is why God had to refine Paul in fire. And you mentioned about refining in fire. And Jeremiah talks, I believe it's Jeremiah who talks about purifying in the furnace of affliction. And I truly believe that is the only way that God can truly get us to a point where we recognize and understand our true dependence upon him, is by being refined through the furnace of fire and affliction. And that is why I'm thankful for some of the afflictions that I've had in my life, some of the pain that I've experienced. I'm sure you have, because it has made us stronger, it has humbled us, and it has positioned us to be strong warriors for God.
Well, Chris, I feel like we've had some version of this discussion before and probably landed on slightly different places. But I think, the Lord doesn't cause any of the affliction in our life he's a good father. He's absolutely good, but he can use everything, and he does use everything. And,
Yes.
I hate to say that if we are refined by fire, it seems like it's either because of us or it's because of the enemy. It's not because of God, but God can use it, and he does use it, and he turns everything to our good as we're pursuing him.
Yes, I love that. That is very, very true. And he can always bring it to our greater good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it is a joy and a privilege to have with us today Senator Jeremy Stine, great state senator out of District 27, Calcasieu Parish, who, as you recall, was instrumental on the Senate floor in making sure that Gabe Furman's House Bill 648, prohibiting transgender mutilation of our minors, was passed in the Senate, and also very instrumental in bringing Valerie Hodges' land bill in Louisiana, two extremely important bills, to conclusion in the Senate. Senator Stine, what a pleasure to have you with us today. How are you, sir?
Doing excellent, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'll just say real quickly on that, it was great to see you and your wife there for those crucial instrumental votes. And y'all were some of the first people that congratulated me after those two votes, the gay permit bill and Valerie Hodges bill. And it meant the world to me. And I just want to thank you for being there, witnessing it, and more importantly, for the support. So honored to be on your show, and I just want to thank you and your wife and Danielle and everyone else for all that you do. So thank you.
You bet. And it is just, it was historic because both of those bills were so very, very important, and your presence was felt in a very, very real way. You and Senator Jay Morris, I'll remember both of you very vividly down there on that issue. Moving on here, Jeremy, what did you think about the governor's inaugural address? A new governor, a new legislature, great new leaders being elected. What are your thoughts on the governor's address, and what do you see moving forward for our state?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it was one for me. It was one of great hope and optimism. You couldn't have asked for more beautiful weather. It did get a little chilly towards the end there, but the first family looked amazing. Governor Landry gave a heck of a speech. Again, the bigger themes of one of hope and optimism. I liked what he spoke to. He mentioned being statesman, but also for me personally, Chris, what I really liked what he hit on, and we're going to tackle this very soon. And he says, "Look, we will no longer coddle criminals," and that phrase stood out to me because that's what we've been doing for too long, Chris, and that's why we're going to have that special session. And I want your listeners and everyone to realize these last 8 years have been one of great failure. And think about this: the last 8 years of all 50 states, Louisiana has lost more population than all 50 states for 8 years. And where it gets really frustrating, Chris, is the southern region, the entire South. Each of those states have gained in population. Louisiana, these last 8 years, is the only state to have not gained population, but actually lost population, not just to the South, but we lost more population than any state in the Union. It's incredibly frustrating. And that goes back to Governor Edwards. And I think it was we've all seen the love letters these last several weeks. It's been hard to stomach from the press about how great of a governor he is. But if you measure the last governor by one metric and one metric alone, which is we lost population, and that's the most important metric. That's the only way you're going to grow and be successful as a state, is to have more people in your state. That's what creates economic opportunities and everything else that goes with that. You have to be able to grow your state. And he failed us in that one metric alone. And for that reason, I think it was a failure of a governorship from losing population the last 8 years. It's completely unacceptable. But look, we're going to get back. The only way to move forward with this, Chris, is to first tackle crime and safety, right? I like to tell folks, Chris, if I'm in California looking to move out of the state, let's say, because they're leaving in droves too, not just Louisiana, they're leaving in droves in California and New York, high liberal states. If I have the opportunity to move to Denver, Colorado, or New Orleans, Louisiana, you know what the first thing my wife is going to ask me? She's going to say, "Hey, is it safe?" Especially if you have a growing family, right? Is it safe? And so we got to tackle that from the get-go. And we intend to do that with a special session coming up soon. So anyhow, I could talk all day, Chris, but I'll open it up. Go ahead.
But is that the core issue, Jeremy? People talk about issues across the board, from oppressive taxation to many other issues that keep both businesses and citizens from coming to Louisiana and are causing businesses and citizens to leave, as you said, in droves. Unique in the South, really. Is the crime issue, in your view, has it reached such a point now where you think that is the paramount issue of our state right now?
Look, we got 4 years ahead of us, and it's going to be a great 4 years. This is just one bite at the apple, so to speak. There are many issues, but this is you have to be safe first. That's I wouldn't say it's more important than the others, but we got to let the country know that we are back open for business, and when you move here, you're going to feel safe. That has to be taken care of first. But equally as important, Chris, is education. We have to revitalize. We have to have better education. That, by the way, it's the second thing my wife is going to ask me if we're moving out of the state. How is the education system? Do they have good public schools? And if they don't have good public schools, do they have good private schools? And is it affordable? We, the Republican Party, we've done a good job, but we can do a better job. Let's face it, we are the party of parents, giving to parental rights, whether that's education on down. And look, you go back to not to get all wax poetic and philosophical, but all the way back to Plato versus Aristotle. These same left versus right issues have been plaguing us. Plato being one of the left, wanting the government to look after you in everything that you do. Aristotle saying, no, that's not the way for a successful, vibrant society. It's through parents, families, and communities, most importantly, faith. And those things, that is what makes up the Republican Party. And the beautiful thing about the Republican Party, and that's what I've ran on, and Jeff and other strong conservatives, faith first, family, and community. And that's how you get back to education. Having a revitalizing and having a stronger education system is giving parents more control. Again, we are the party of parents. Everyone knows to have a successful anything in life, frankly, you need a strong two-parent system in the household, and raising those families, educating. And this goes back, again, all the way back to Aristotle, and how to have a vibrant, successful society. So that's education is going to be very important coming up for this regular session, which starts mid-March, goes to June. And then flowing from that, creating more economic opportunities and looking at ways to obviously lower insurance rates. But that's more nitty-gritty in terms of the tactics. But broad themes is, again, reducing crime, revitalizing education, creating economic opportunities, and, of course, getting down into lowering those insurance rates.
Yeah. And Jeremy, I loved your point about Edwards being a failure on the population metric alone. And it brought to mind Proverbs 14:28, which says, a large population is a king's glory, but without subjects, a prince is ruined. And I think that's the note he's going out on in my book.
I like that.
Yeah, I've got to get that one, Danielle. I got to get that one.
Thank you for that, Danielle. We might have to use
no
that
problem.
I might have to use that on my next floor speech, but you're absolutely right. Look, that's the only way the economic engine works, is you have to have more people. And when you're driving people out of your state for a whole slew of reasons, but we haven't even gotten to the burdensome taxes and everything else. But don't you find it interesting that the three states that lost the most population were all run by Dems? I mean, look at it: New York, California, and Louisiana, high tax, burdensome states. And look, and what's sad is people were looking to leave some of these states to come to the South, and they didn't come to Louisiana. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that? Well, we're gonna implement. We finally have the opportunity with Governor Landry and a strong legislature to make things right, and we're looking forward to that.
And Danielle, you are so right about the idea that if we don't return really to a legislature that represents citizens, then we're not going to have hope for the future. We have to get there.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
We do need to get there. And maybe just shifting gears here, Jeremy, for a moment, there is a controversial sale that is set to impact, I think, about half of the state's health insurance coverage. Can you tell us what's going on with this proposed sale of Blue Cross Blue Shield to Elevance?
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. This is in terms of the short term, guys, because this is all going to take place between now and middle of February. But in terms of the short term, this is one of the most important things that we need to tackle. Well, I say the legislature unfortunately has no authority over it. What I'm trying to do is just shed light on this potentially bad deal for Louisiana. As you know, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana, they insure 1.9 million people. Almost half the state of Louisiana is insured by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana, and they're looking to sell to a company called Elevance, an out-of-state company. A lot of the shareholders are the usual suspects of BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and it's just poorly run company. And this Elevance publicly traded for-profit company, whereas Blue Cross right now is owned by its members. It's a nonprofit owned by its members. Blue Cross, their leadership is attempting to sell to, again, this Elevance company. And if you look at Elevance, they used to be called Anthem. And anytime I see a company that switches their names, especially a publicly traded company, it tells me they're not doing a very good job. I can think of one instance where in my neck of the woods, after post-Hurricane Laura and Delta, there was a company called Suddenlink. They did a terrible job, and they've since had to change their name to Optimum. And so anytime you see a company going from Anthem to Elevance, which they've done in this case, switching their name midstream, it tells me when you start to Google Anthem Insurance and Elevance Insurance, they have been levied with billions, with a B, billions of dollars of fines against the company. And so number one, I don't think Blue Cross needs to sell. I mean, they have done actually a pretty good job of insuring the state of Louisiana for their health. And number two, if you are going to even consider selling, Elevance is not the right choice. And I think they've just done a poor job of explaining that. And I think it's not good for the overall health of Louisiana. And just real quick, so everyone understands the mechanism, what they tend to do, the only way this particular sale can go through, right now there's 92,000 policyholders. And it's a mutual insurance company. So those are the owners. And so in order for this deal to actually go through, 2/3 of those 92,000 policyholders have to vote yes. And those ballots are hitting the mailbox as we speak. And so if 2/3 of those members vote yes, then it goes to the insurance commissioner, Tim Temple, and he gets to vote yes or no. And so those are the two things that have to happen. They're going to have a hearing. The insurance commissioner, Tim Temple, will have a hearing on February 14th to discuss, have an open house, if you will, and have people, public comments to discuss this deal. So I just hope that people are paying attention. If you're one of those policyholders, please read the fine print. Again, in my opinion, it does not bode well for the 92,000 policyholders or the 1.9 million members, which again is almost half the state of Louisiana. I can promise you this: premiums will go up under this, and it's not. We're trying to attract people to the state. I think this will be a deterrent of attracting people to the state.
Yeah, not going to help. If the 2/3 votes, Jeremy, if the 2/3 votes get there, Temple would have the ultimate decision-making authority on it, assuming it gets the 2/3 threshold votes from the policyholders.
That's correct. And look, if you're in Commissioner Temple's shoes, I don't know which way he would vote, yes or no. But if let's assume the 2/3 vote yes goes through, he may say, and if I were in that position, it'd be hard for me to say no because 2/3 of the members are wanting it. But the problem with it is, I'm confident that the people of Louisiana, or at least these policyholders, will make the right choice and vote it down. But the problem with it, Blue Cross is dangling $3,000 to each policyholder if they vote yes. So if you vote yes, you get $3,000. That's part of the sell. And so, you imagine if you're Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Smith on a fixed income, and they're dangling the $3,000, it's going to be hard to turn that down. But ultimately, I'm confident that the policyholders will make the right decision, vote this thing down, and that way it doesn't even reach Commissioner Temple's desk. But look, if you're reading just the spirit of the law, the actual law, it says in statute it needs to be fair and equitable to both the policyholders and the members of Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it just isn't, simply because all the other members don't get a voice in the matter. It's only the ones that are the actual policy holders. And so, I could delve into it longer, but it's a frustrating prospect. Confident that the people will do the right thing. Last thing I'm going to say, just real quick, is it is unfortunate that the board of directors stand to gain big from this deal. They currently make $105,000 a year by sitting on the board of Louisiana. I think there's about 12 board members. Well, they will be guaranteed $1 million if this deal goes through. They get paid $105,000 each year for 10 years, and so it just doesn't pass the smell test for me. And so again, I just hopefully we can discuss it a little bit later, but as the February 14th date comes near. But I just hope your listeners understand what's at stake here.
Yeah, we only have a couple of minutes left, Senator Stine. I can tell you we absolutely will have you back on, but I want to ask you this because this was mentioned in Governor Landry's inaugural speech, and it was a beautiful speech. I thought it was extremely statesmanlike, and one of the phrases that jumped out at me in his speech was, "It's time to return in Louisiana to the will of the citizens over special interests." And he said, it's time to return to statesmen over politicians. I wanted to get your gut response to those phrases that he used in his inaugural address. And do you think that those are important and resonate with the citizens of Louisiana?
Look, absolutely, Chris. I mean, this is, it actually reminds me of all the great work that you and Danielle and Chris, your lovely wife, has been doing. It's sort of a return from a politician's standpoint. Yeah, the being rising above the fray and doing the right thing for Louisiana and the special interests. But it also reminds me of all the important work that you're doing, the advocacy work that you all do, listening to the people and what they absolutely want, not listening to the special interest and representing the people, but doing it in a manner, like you said, to be more statesmanlike, rise above some of the things that, frankly, have been holding Louisiana back for a long time.
Yeah, they certainly have. And we were also debating off air, and maybe you can weigh in on this. He talked about trusting the whole science and following the whole science, and not just the science that's related to subsidies that enrich certain people. Do you have any sense on whether that was related to COVID? Was it related to the environment and maybe CO2 capture that's been controversial? Any thoughts on that?
That's a great question in regard to the subsidies. I didn't catch some of that, but perhaps that was some of the things. I got to believe some of the COVID stuff, especially it's scary is if indeed it was in relation to some of the federal government stuff, is the amount of money that's been spent with regards to the COVID. And that, look, it's all the inflation there's a reason there's inflation. You can't spend like a drunken sailor, pointing at both the Fed and Congress, both fiscal policy. And so anyhow, the whole thing has been frustrating to deal with. That's why we're dealing with inflation as we speak. Yeah, absolutely. I think it could have been in relation to all of the poor federal policies that we've been witnessing.
Yeah. Before we let you go, what because we're almost over your time, but I have to thank you for being patient. I have to ask you this, Jeremy. What are your thoughts generally as a conservative state senator about federal overreach into the affairs of our state, into the individual civil liberties of Louisiana citizens? Does that concern you? And looking back on the whole COVID episode, do you anticipate having issues like that in the future where we possibly have an overbearing federal and even international forces coming down on our freedom here in Louisiana again?
Oh, absolutely. We are going to. It's scary at the prospect, but you better believe it. And that's why the states, right? We have to be vigilant. But yeah, it's going to continue to get worse unless we fight back. I mean, it's been plain as far as the eye can see with regards to COVID. And that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But I will tell you this: a constituent of mine, a dear friend of mine, his name's Corey Willis. He's with PPEI. They do tuning, things like that for cars. This poor man, he has been, when I tell you the amount of things that he has been through from the EPA, I mean, when you've got EPA arming themselves and busting down doors due to carbon and these other matters. Look, every department is open. They've had a lot of overreach, and the stories that he recounts to me, true stories, he's got all the documents from the EPA alone. It's frightening. It's enough to keep you up at night. And so the federal overreach is real. It's not going to stop. The only way to get better at it is to have strong state legislatures. And I mean that, again, I think it was providence, thank God, to President Trump in having the ability and opportunity. And I think that is God's grace and the Holy Spirit working to be able to have appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. And you'll recall during his election, that's a lot of times you talk to a lot of the Republicans that they voted for him because they knew about the Supreme Court and they knew that there'd be openings. It was sort of again, the Holy Spirit working through all of us. And that Supreme Court ruling, they have absolutely had more. They've done a better job of being able to leave more things up to the states, right? We saw it with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I hope that trend will continue. And if it does, it bodes well for each and every individual state. You'll start to see the state legislatures sort of gain in power, if you will, because they'll have a little bit more discretion, more authority. That's my ultimate hope. And if the Supreme Court continues to trend in that direction, like they did by overturning Roe v. Wade and sending it down to the states, it ultimately bodes well for the future of our country. And so I hope that that's the case, because the federal government overreach is real. We see it every single day. But the only way to get better at this is to have a strong state legislature, and hope and pray that the Supreme Court continues to do things like they did by overturning Roe v. Wade and sending things back down to the states.
Well said. Well said.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We have so many more questions we'd love to ask you. But we know but you have to run. So we will save those for another day. But thank you for coming on. Know that you always have an open invitation here. We'd love to see you again. And any final words to our listeners on your way out?
Just to continue doing what you're doing, both Danielle and Chris. We sincerely appreciate all that you do, but and all your listeners, keep up the work. I truly appreciate this discussion, and I would hope to see you all again soon in Baton Rouge, and just keep doing what you're doing. It means the world to not just me personally, but the state of Louisiana.
Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. God bless you, Godspeed, and we look forward to seeing you at the upcoming session, and thank you for all your service to our state.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time.
Chris, we could have talked to him for an hour, easily.
Oh my gosh. It's like, I think that it was just, Danielle, that was really like just back and forth. And, what came to mind, we talked about. I mean, there were so many other things we could have discussed. He comes across as somebody who understands the threats that we face. And I think really has a real conscience of a conservative, and understands what needs to be done to really move the Senate in the right direction.
Yeah, the best laid plans of mice and men. We've had some technical glitches today. We've had some administrative glitches today, and we had a plan for what this conversation was going to look like. But it felt important to talk about some of the most pressing matters to the state, and I think we can save some of those other questions for another day. But I'm just really hopeful. I'm so encouraged that he is such a strong conservative voice, that he has such confidence in this incoming Senate and the incoming governor, no longer governor-elect. And I think we just have some really bright days ahead. So I know we've heard from some of our listeners that people are a little concerned about some of the reports we've seen coming out of the news about various appointments and some leadership choices. But we just have to have faith that God's at work in them, just as we have been praying for them and praying for the state that they will do the right thing. Of course, we have to remain vigilant. And I'm not saying that we trust them blindly, but I do believe that we are really set up for success. And with the grace of God and with our listeners' active engagement, supporting good people like Senator Stine, we have so much to
Absolutely.
gain. We have so
We
much to
do.
gain.
We have so much to gain, and we're going to be looking very, very closely at some of the rumors that we've heard about Democrat chairmanships of these critically important committees. And we are going to be very open. We're going to be very honest about what we are seeing, and we're going to be asking some very, very direct questions about these committee appointments. We have a rare opportunity in our state now with a good governor, a supermajority in both houses of the legislature, a brand new crop of conservative legislators. And this is an opportunity that we have to take advantage of. And I'm not at all convinced at this moment that appointing Democrat chairman of these critically important committees is the best way to go about advancing our agenda. My mind is still open, and I am very, very eager to hear the rationalization or the justification for that. But we're going to be looking very critically upon this scene. I can promise you.
I know you can promise us, because we have seen great legislation killed in committee by Republicans. We've seen great legislation killed in committee or nearly killed in committee by people who claim to be on the side of conservatism, yet never vote a conservative way. So we will be keeping a very close eye on that. And I look, I'm gonna be optimistic, and I'm thinking in what the next couple of days we have to know what the committee chairmanships are, because special session is barreling toward us.
Absolutely. It's coming up very, very soon. We'll know who the committee chairmen are, and we're going to be able to make an assessment about whether or not they're going to be able to lead these committees in a conservative direction. And the point you just made a minute ago, Danielle, about the fact that, we had two hugely important bills in 2023 that were gutted and destroyed in committee by Republicans. One was the transgender on minor bill that was originally killed in committee, and the other was the all-important land bill from Valerie Hodges to keep our foreign enemies from purchasing land in Louisiana. Both of those bills were initially killed by Republican chairmen of committees in the legislature. And if it wasn't for an outcry, this massive outcry among Louisiana citizens, those bills would have not been successful. So I have a very hard time understanding how putting Democrats in those positions is going to help advance the agenda. And this is hugely important, that we don't squander this opportunity. Again, I'm willing to accept the possibility that there is a justification for this. And I'm not saying that there are no conservative Democrats in the legislature. There aren't very many, but there are some. So we will see how it plays out. But I can promise you that we will be watching it very, very closely.
Yes, and it bears mentioning, Chris, that next week kicks off the first special session. This is one that has basically been court mandated. It is a special session for congressional redistricting, and the legis.la.gov website, the state legislature website, tells us that it is expected to end no later than the 24th, 6 or 7 p.m., something like that. So we'll be keeping eyes on that. I would assume, Chris, we haven't really gotten any answers yet, and it doesn't seem like there's even a lot of clarity yet amongst legislators about who will be leading that effort in the House and in the Senate. So that remains to be seen. Those are some questions we would like to get answered and hope to have answered soon. I guess if we don't have them answered soon, we will just find out along with everybody else.
Absolutely. And I'd like to finish at least my comments regarding this by referring to two or three things that Governor Landry said in his inaugural address that are very, very important. And I mentioned a couple of these while Senator Stine was on the show. He emphasized the importance of implementing the will of the citizens over special interests. Big special interests, big money special interests are killing our state and killing our legislative agenda. Governor Landry talked about parents having primary governing authority over their children. Critically important. He mentioned in his inaugural address that we need to educate, not indoctrinate our students. That has been such a big issue with the social emotional learning, the critical race theory injecting itself into our schools. So good to know that he understands that. He talked about having statesmen over politicians. For too long, we've had way too many politicians in our legislature, and honestly, way too few statesmen. He talked about the crime and that we should no longer be victims of crime in our state. Talked about small business owners as being the backbone. The people who have built the state are small business owners who've been existing under oppressive taxation for way too long. He talked about the health of our citizens being politicized, probably alluding to COVID. You know, everything that he talked about in his inaugural address was a call to return to fundamental liberty of our citizens, fundamental freedom, and being truly representatives in our legislature and in our government of Louisiana citizens and not big, powerful money special interests. So we must move in that direction, and we must hold them accountable for what they say.
I love that. I love that recap, Chris. And I think the cherry on top of all of that for me was his theme of welcome home. And I think what he meant by welcome home was exactly that. Welcome to conservative governance. Welcome back to people who are governing, who are thinking like you, who have your interests in heart, and who are going to fight for you and not take special interest money and not pass over the will of the people for their own pocket. So I am thrilled about that, very thrilled about that. And it's good to be home, Chris.
It's good. Hey, Danielle, it is good to be home. And it is also good to have spent the last, whatever it is, 45 minutes or an hour, I never know, with you, because it always goes by so fast. But thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. You're just an extraordinary co-host and warrior in this fight, and I'm so thankful to you, so thankful to our many listeners and supporters of the State of Freedom as we continue to grow and expand the voice of freedom in Louisiana.
Yes, me too. It's always a pleasure to work with you, Chris, and such a privilege. I would also be remiss if we didn't thank our listeners for their support, for their encouragement. You know, Chris, we were at the inaugural ball together with your wife, Katie, and we just had a blast for starters, but it was so fun getting to see so many listeners, getting to meet so many people who I've never met in person. You've met a lot of these people in person. I was kind of getting introduced around, but it was just so much fun. And I just I just enjoyed it so much because connecting with the people who actually listen to us is just what an honor, what an absolute honor that people would spend their time with us, that they would choose to listen to us. And just thank you, listeners, thank you so much. It has been such a privilege to bring these episodes to you. And thanks for bearing with us as we learn and grow as we go along the way.
And how many people, Danielle, and how many people walked up to us during the course of that inaugural ball and said, thank you for LeCag, and thank you for the State of Freedom. Thank you for bringing the voice of constitutional conservatism to people across Louisiana. Thank you for what you're doing to help return our government to the citizens. I was just blown away and so humbled by it. And
Exactly.
I
That's what I
join
was going to
you.
say.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just incredibly humbling. It's incredibly humbling. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. And if listeners would like to support us financially, they can do that at freedomstate.us. Drop us a line. If we didn't meet you at the inauguration, feel free, drop us a line. Let us know you're listening to us. Let us know what you're enjoying about the show and maybe any ideas you have about the show. We'd love to hear from you. And you can do that at info@freedomstate.us or there's like a comment box at freedomstate.us if you go there as well. And the P.O. Box is P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana, 70343.
And don't forget about LCAG, Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, which will continue to be your eyes, your ears, and your voice in the state legislature to make sure that people who are serving us in the legislature are actually representing the interests of Louisiana citizens, making sure the way they vote, the way they act, what they do advances freedom instead of strangles freedom. Your donations, your resources help us to continue in that fight on the front lines in the legislature. Please send us a donation, lacag.org, LACAG.org, or you can send donations and checks to P.O. Box 64952, Baton Rouge, Louisiana 70896. As you know, it takes resources, it takes money to build infrastructure and to continue to fight for all the good people in this state. And we thank you for what you are doing for us, and we humbly ask for your continued support.
Yes. And an opportunity for any listener who may be interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in precious metals. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They're beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. So if you're interested in purchasing metals, you can visit metalstacks.com/DWalker. That helps me out. I get the commission. You can just get to shopping there, have so much fun. And you can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, just email me directly at Danielle@freedomstate.us and we can get you more information on that.
Katie and I are thrilled to be partnering with you on Metal Stacks, Danielle, and so excited about the possibilities going forward. And more broadly, we're thrilled about the advances we have made in such a short time on the state of freedom and with LCAG. I'm just so overwhelmed with joy and optimism about what the future holds as each day, with courage and grace and discipline and perseverance, we take another step to preserve the great state of freedom in Louisiana.
Amen. Have a great one, Chris.
Love you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.